He gave a talk on wildlife around our place. He was from Kottayam Nature Society, Mr. Sabu Kurian. So I was very fascinated. I mean, he was showing all the pictures of amazing birds and butterflies, all those things. So I asked him, where can I learn all those things? So then he said, okay, there is a nature society, Kottayam Nature Society. You can go and meet there. So next Saturday, I landed up there. So I met a lot of interesting people there. I mean, who were talking about birds, butterflies. So I started going out with them into the jungle. So in fact, I used to bunk some of my classes and go to the jungle with them. So when I finished my degree, I joined Coconut Lagoon, one of my first job provider. I mean, it was amazing to start my career in Coconut Lagoon. I mean, I don't know, some of you must have been there. It's an amazing backwater property. So we used to do a lot of walks there, especially butterfly walks, I mean, dragonfly, bird watching, all those things. So worked there for 2 years, learned a lot of things. Then one of my friend called me and said, she said, David, would you like to go to Central India and work with tigers? And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I applied for that job. So and I got through it. I worked with Taj safaris and all. Eventually, I got fortunate to get trained by some of the Sisi African rangers and Indian rangers. So I got proper training of guiding and how to track animals, how to track tigers. Then I worked in Kana. Then I was in Pench National Park for a few months. Then I was in Satpura for 6 years. That was also very interesting because that's one park nobody knew about that park. And then worked. I mean, I was in Bandhavgarh for 1 or 2 months. Then the last park I worked was in um, Tadoba. So during all these days in Central India, I mean, those who have been into Central India, you know that people just get into a safari vehicle and drive around to just look for tigers, or the leopards, or a bears. And me and my friend Surya, we discussed this. You know, why can't we have a book which talk about all the animals? I mean, jungle is not just about the tigers; it's about other animals also. So Surya and me compiled a book on Central Indian wildlife, and we gave it for all the park guides for free. I mean, they were all started using it. I mean, eventually we could actually see the people are started looking into. Um I mean, in other animals also, even birds, if they see a mongoose, they take out the books and show it to the guests. Okay, this is very interesting mongoose found here, or a squirrel. So all those things happen, and then again, me and Surya started talking about, why don't we come up with a book on South Indian wildlife? Yes, recently we published a book on South Indian wildlife. I mean, last January it got published. That was also an interesting journey because it was in COVID time, so we couldn't travel much. So we have to write an email to Surya. Surya will send it back to me. Sometimes we have to sit for 2 months and compile everything to publish a book like that. Almost covering 6 states, almost 2,000 species. That was an interesting task. And after the COVID, I came back to Kerala. Then I got a job. I mean, I actually work in Wayanad Wild in CGH Earth Property. I mean, I'm actually sitting here. There's a lot of frogs are calling outside. I can actually hear a lot of frogs. And all three areas are evergreen forests, which we sometimes we hear elephants. Yesterday, I heard a barking deer giving alarm called Sambar deer. So all those things, it's amazing to see. So eventually, this is what I do here. Even in COVID time, I love my job. I mean, yeah, there's no people around, but yeah, we take out our camera, we look after the property, but at the same time, in the evenings, when we get time, we get out and take photos of all the animals. So, I mean, Western Ghats is very close to my heart. I mean, it's actually older than Himalayas. Or Himalayas is one of the newest mountains in the world. They're still growing, but think about these hills around here, these amazing animals and all. So it's very close to my heart. So I thought this is the day. I mean, today is the World Environmental Day. So today is the day I want to show some of the amazing animals, some stories which I learned. I seen it in this jungle. So we can go through that. I hope all of you can see this screen. Yeah, so these are some of the stories, which is very interesting stories, what I learned as probably 14, 15 years roaming around all these jungles. So what is this special about Western Ghats? I mean, I travel almost 22 states in India. I've seen quite a lot of forests. Some of my favorite forests are like in foothills of Himalayas, Corbett Tiger Reserve, or in Kaziranga, where you get to see amazing wildlife. I mean, from one watchtower, I counted probably 200 elephants and 40 rhinos, hog deer, swamp deers, water buffaloes. So there are amazing forests there. But what is the difference between this jungle here? I mean, what you are looking at a screen here, it's actually a Western Ghat forest, the Shola forest and the grasslands. The amount of biodiversity, it's unparalleled here. I mean, I remember when we were doing a survey in one of the southern Western Ghat forests, one night we got around 27 species of frogs, and out of that, around 5 of them were new to science. So these are the biodiversity we'll get to see in this forest in Western Ghats. So Western Ghats is actually, if you're looking at that map there, it's a red line. What you see, it's almost a 900 over 900 kilometer stretch of hills, which got a different variety of forests. Some are evergreen forests. We have a dry deciduous forest, moist deciduous forest, which provide a lot of variety of animals. Okay, any idea what is it? I'm sure some of you must have seen it. Can anyone comment on the chat box? Let's see. Anyone can see this. What is this? Any idea? Any guess? Okay, somebody's commented sponge. Okay, that's a good one. Somebody said a frog, mosses, frog skin. Maitrani sings, Raworchestus neurostragona, raindrop frog, lizard. Okay, lichens. Okay, corals. Okay, thank you. I'll show the next picture, then you'll get an idea what it is. Okay, so it is actually a trapdoor spiders, which you will see throughout in Western Ghats. So what does these spiders do? I mean, imagine if you have a wall there, mud wall. These spiders actually make a tunnel, a small hole inside, and they'll take out all the outside substance, the same color, whatever the lichen or mosses. They'll make a nice door there, and from outside you won't be able to see it. But what this spiders does, they actually stay inside, and they'll have a minute webbing all around its burrow. Suppose if a cockroach walk around that burrow, the spiders can actually sense inside. They'll come out, open the door, go out and catch the cockroach and go back and close the door. Suppose if there's a spider hunting wasp, there are some wasps which hunt these spiders, or any other predators come, they can close the door. And some of these trapdoor spiders are so smart, they have multiple door also inside their tunnel. So imagine if a predator goes try to get inside, there'll be one door will be there inside. You won't be able to, and there'll be different diversions also. One second, somebody talking. Let me. Okay. So that's one of the special thing about these trapdoor spiders. We have quite a lot of species. Interestingly, there's a lot of species need to be described. There's a lot of species new to science. Okay. Can you see this frog here? That is a water drop frog or canopy bush frog, Raworchestus neurostragona. I mean, I can actually hear that frog calling right outside, which is a very interesting frog because Usually we see frogs on the ground, sometimes on the top of the bushes and all. But this particular frog actually found on the top of the trees. Imagine you are hearing a frog which is over 20 or 30 meters on the top of the trees. Especially why these frogs are called water drop frog. Imagine if you have a bucket of water under a half open pipe, it will give a sound like tuck, tuck. Yeah, that's the way this frog calls. And it's also got a very amazing breeding history. Most of these frogs, I mean, they have an amphibious life. When they want to lay eggs, they'll go to the water, lay eggs. It's become a tadpole and it become an adult frog. So that is their life cycle of a frog. But what happened for this kind of frogs? These are called the bush frogs. So bush frogs don't have a tadpole stage. So what they do, the next picture here. So when they lay eggs, I mean, it's become eventually the tadpole also inside hatch inside. It will come out as a froglet, and it's like a small baby frog. And it's amazing this frog. How do they survive on this top of the trees? Luckily, last month we managed to see quite a few of them, because before the monsoon, I mean, in the summertime and all these frogs, some of the frogs will come and stay in the leaf litters. And when the monsoon time, they'll try to climb onto the trees. Here is another very interesting frog, which is again found in southern Western Ghats. It's also found in Wayanad. And where I work in Wayanad Wild, I photographed yesterday also. So what happened? This frog, I mean, like we know that most of the frogs will breed in monsoon time. They actually lay eggs. You can hear them throughout the monsoon. They'll be croaking all over there. And some of the frogs breed in summertime. Like if there's a rain in summer, in water puddles, they're known to breed and all. But this particular frog, what they do, especially in Wayanad and all, in peak winter, like in December, January, there'll be a good mist, and from the mist there will be a slight drizzle falling into the forest streams. So these frogs actually need those kind of habitat to breed. And also we've been studying these frogs quite a few years. So unfortunately, past 4-5 years, there's no proper winter in December, January. There's no proper winter, and there's no mist and no drizzle also. So most of these frogs have stopped breeding. I think the global warming is the number one culprit for that. So this is the way they breed. They'll go into those forest streams. Again, there is another amazing frog, which is called the Myristica swamp frog. This one mainly in southern Western Ghats. In Western Ghats, we have an amazing forest called the Myristica frog. You must have heard of this nutmeg trees, nutmeg. So the same family of trees, they actually grow in the marshy areas. So this particular frog actually breed there. They live there. So just before the monsoon, especially the pre-monsoon time in May month, mid-May onwards, all these frogs, hundreds of the males will come and gather in particular swamp. And the males are brown in color, the females are green in color, and females are bigger, and the snout is much more pointed than the male. So what these frogs does, they'll actually come out and breed. And I'll go to the next picture. This is the swamp of that Myristica or the nutmeg trees. So this is what it happens. So all these frogs, especially when a male find a female, they'll do amplex, and they actually go into the ground. What you see in the top right picture, these frogs actually get into the leaf litters, and they'll go into the ground, and they'll start dig the ground, and they lay eggs. So imagine this is pre-monsoon, like in May month, you'll get a few showers, so the ground will have enough moisture, so they can actually dig it, lay eggs there. And after that, these frogs will disappear there. But after a week or two, that's the proper monsoon. The June, July, the proper monsoon starts that month. So the entire area will get flooded. So that time, all these eggs will hatch, the tadpoles will come out, and they will survive. So this is a typical cycle going on for so many years. So imagine what will happen if there's a cyclone, or there is the weather pattern changes. If the frogs lay eggs in May, if there's no rain for next 1 month or something, entire the eggs won't hatch. So that population of the frogs can be wiped out. And also there's an interesting name for this frog. It's actually named after Freddie Mercury. The guys who wrote the paper, my friends, I mean, he was very keen on Freddie Mercury's songs. So he said, if I am naming one of the frog, it will be named after Freddie Mercury. And also it's a monotypic genus. That means in that entire genus, only one frog is there. Again, this is probably the most beautiful frog in Western Ghat. It's called the galaxy frog or the black macrohylid. Look at the colors. It's actually black with a shiny white spots all over the body. Excuse me. And some reddish orangish patches on the belly. And I still remember when we, after the COVID, we went to this place. After the COVID month, I think last July or August, we went to this place to photograph in a place called Munnar. So we climbed the hill and we were looking for the frog, and we found out it was hiding under a dead log. So this is one frog. I mean, we know that all the frogs actually call for the female. They'll make sound. They have a vocal sac and they have a tympanum. The ears are called the tympanum. Interestingly, this frog don't have a vocal sac and there's no tympanum. So nobody knows how do these frogs breed. It's amazing. Still, a lot of studies are going on. We are hoping to see the result come out soon. So we will know how they breed. It will be an interesting study. Again, while walking up to those hills, we saw two amazing snakes. The left one is a coral snake. It's a striped coral snake. The down one is the pitu viper, large scale pitu viper. I mean, I didn't know it was there. I mean, I actually walked over it while trying to photograph a dragonfly. We were crossing a stream. Then I saw a dragonfly walked over a stream. Then I realized later, there was a large scale pitu viper sitting on the rock. Again, some amazing stories of dragonflies. I mean, dragonflies are close to my heart. That is my first love. I've been studying them a lot. This particular dragonfly, it's actually found world over distribution. But why I want to bring in your attention to this particular one, it's called the wandering glider or the globe skimmers. So the name itself means they actually known to wander around or they known to travel. So this particular dragonfly, I mean, in India, we have two monsoon. Now it's happening, what is the southwest monsoon? And in November, December, October, end of October and November, we have a northeast monsoon. Where both these monsoon happen with the help of trade winds. The trade winds actually bring the rain into India. So now the southwest monsoon, the millions of these dragonflies actually flown from Africa. If you go out from in India, those who are living in India, if you go out from your house, if it's a sunny day, go out and look into the sky or around the paddy fields and all, you will see hundreds of the dragonflies flying around them. They are actually just landed from Africa. Imagine a tiny insect, they're flying with the help of wind. Millions of them, they'll come here, they breed, and the next generation will fly back to Africa with the help of the northeast monsoon. So again, this is that pattern. How they fly. In November, December, they'll fly back. June, July, they'll come to India. And interestingly, that the picture to the left, my friend took that picture. They were doing a survey on dragonflies. Suddenly, they see these millions of dragonflies flying above their head. So, the same time, the bird what you see below there, that is called the Amur falcon. So, this bird also actually follow these dragonflies when they fly back to Africa. These dragonflies also follow them. This is the main food for them. Excuse me. And I want to tell you another interesting story of this same dragonfly. Recently, some of the scientists actually done the study of the same dragonfly. It's a widely distributed dragonfly across the world. It's there in Australia. It's there in Europe. It's there in US. It's there in Africa. So they took the gene. They studied the gene pool. Then they realized it's actually from the same gene pool of all the same dragonflies across the world. So that means these dragonflies, when they come to India, they may be flying to Southeast Asia, from there flying to Australia, or when they go to Africa, from there they're going to Europe, from there they're flying to US. So it's an amazing mystery still, but we know that it's actually flying from Africa to India, which is established. If you get time, please do go and watch. There's an amazing TED talk by Dr. Charles Anderson. Do watch that. This is again one of my favorite dragonfly. It is called the pygmy skimmer, which known to lay eggs on the not directly into the water. We know that most of the dragonflies, when they want to lay eggs, they'll go and dip the tail into the water and lay eggs. Or they sometimes few damselflies and all, they sit on some floating vegetation and lay eggs. But one second, just give me a second. Yeah, so this particular dragonfly, when they lay eggs, it's actually imagine if you have a small pool there or a well. This dragonfly actually known to lay eggs on the top of the well. If there is a hanging branch, they lay eggs there. When it's rain, the eggs actually hatch and larvae drop into the water. So the survival rate will be more than the usual dragonflies. So these dragonflies are very smart. I mean, interestingly, we had named this dragonfly in Malayalam Kinarthumbi. It literally means the well dragonfly because usually you find them along the well. Okay, this is look at these two skinks. It's very pretty, shiny, shiny colors, isn't it? So these are some of the skinks which call the Ristella genus. We know that we have cats. We've seen cats or tigers or whatever cats, even domestic cats. They all have the retractable claws. If they want, they need it, then only they can actually take out their claws and they can use it. The same thing with these skinks. Whenever they need this retractable claws, they can take it out. So that's one specialty of these skinks. They are found in high altitude. These photographs I taken from high altitude hills of Munnar and all. I mean, especially entire Western Ghats in the high altitude you will get to see, especially in southern Western Ghats. Again, some of my favorite snakes. These are called the shield tails. If you look at this, it's difficult to make out where is the head and tail, isn't it? Let me show you another picture. Yeah, here. So most of them are, their tails are like that. So what happened? These are fossorial snakes. Fossorial snakes mean they'll live in underground. They'll come out only to probably to feed or to mate or to change their places, especially after the heavy rain. I mean, we do see quite a few of them here in Wayanad. So what happened? Imagine if they have a very strong tail. Some of the tail, if you look at it, it's actually looking like a cut tail. Some are like a blunt tail. So what this shield tail snakes does, it's actually a small snakes. So they have a lot of predators, especially the birds are the main predators for these snakes. So imagine if a bird tried to come and try to bite the snakes, what the snake does, they actually hide the head under their belly and the tail will be on the top of the body. And the bird tried to pick it up the tail. So, I mean, the tail scales are pretty hard. So the birds won't be able to bite it. So after some time when they try, they'll leave the snakes and go away and they can survive. That's the way they survive. It's an amazing, it's beautiful. There's quite a lot of species. I think over 30 species of shield tails are found in Western Ghats. Again, there's a dull looking butterfly, but it's called the albatross, common albatross butterfly. Why I want to talk about this special thing, it's right here because of its migration. So this particular butterflies in the month of December and January, literally thousands or millions of them actually do migrate. Especially there's a park called Arlam Wildlife Sanctuary. I mean, last year also I went to see that amazing phenomenon. So they actually lay eggs on the top of the trees, where on top of the hills where there's a particular tree. It's called Drypetis. They actually lay eggs on those fresh leaves, and thousands of butterflies actually fly down into the valley. Especially they follow streams. And I see, probably imagine a butterfly flying like that one by one. So another butterfly will be following. It's like a chain. So they actually thousands and thousands of them fly. They come and mud puddle there onto these stream sites and they disappear into the jungle. And after that, nobody knows where they go. It's still a mystery. Where are these millions of butterflies? They're disappearing into the jungle. Again, when you talk about Western Ghats biodiversity, we can't stop talk about this amazing bird diversity. We have amazing birds, but I just mentioned only two birds. This is one of the special birds in Western Ghats. It's called the Banasura chilappan. It's recently elevated into a species level. It's actually found only in few hills in Wayanad, in the top of the hills of few Wayanad area. Interestingly, I just spoke to one of my friends. He's saying it's probably less than 2,000 of them are left in the wild. For that, this is probably the most rarest bird one of the rarest bird in the world, or in absolutely in India also. Very difficult to see it, and it's only found on the top of the some of the high altitude hills. Very few people have seen that. I haven't seen it, this bird in the wild. Again, when I want to show this special bird. Can you see it? There's two birds are actually sitting in the middle of that dry leaves, among that dry leaf. I still remember this bird when I saw it first time in Patekad bird sanctuary. Uh, I was with a guide, and actually he told me, David, can you see that tree there? There is two frog moths are sitting there. Can you find it? This is almost 15 years ago. So I said, yeah, why not? I had a binocular. So I literally walked around the tree and tried to locate it, but I couldn't. They were so very well camouflaged. So those who are coming to Western Ghat to see wildlife, I think this is one of the bird to see. It's easy to find. I mean, you can go really close to them, and they don't fly. Then nighttime only they'll fly around, and sometimes they won't move from the same place. And they got a wide mouth like a frog. That's why it's called the frog mouth. There's a better picture of a frog mouth. Look at that. Right? It's the way it's sitting in and hiding inside among the foliage. Okay, two special monkeys from Western Ghats. One is lion-tailed macaque. Another one is the Nilgiri langur. I mean, I think most of you know that lion-tailed macaque is one of the endangered primates in India. Less than few thousands are left in the wild. I mean, look at that mane. It's like a lion's mane, and even the tail also. But the langur to the right, that black langur, Nilgiri langur, it's amazing. We have a very good healthy population here in Wayanad, and also I've seen quite a lot of in Spice Village also in Periyar Tiger Reserve. If you walk through that road towards the boat jetty, you will see quite a lot of Nilgiri langurs there. And I still remember another interesting story. I went to a park called Manas National Park to see golden langur. I was traveling with my friend Karun from Delhi. I mean, he's a mammal freak. I mean, he wants to see all the mammals in India. So he traveled all over India to see them, take photos and all. So I was with him. So he's seen Nilgiri langur. Then we went to Assam. So in Assam, in Manas National Park, you have to go to a place from that camp. You can see a Manas river, a large river. Right across, there's a Bhutan. So we had permission to go across. In Bhutan side, we went and we saw the golden langur. So while watching the golden langur, I was so excited to see those golden langur. I was taking pictures. I was looking through my binoculars and all. Then that time, Karun, whispered to my ears. He said, David, do you know, I think your Nilgiri langurs are the most beautiful langurs in India. And I was so proud to hear that, Western Ghat actually got the most beautiful primate. Again, very elusive and very rare marten in southern India, especially the Nilgiri marten. Very difficult to see it. They largely arboreal. They live on the trees and tree hollows and all. And ferocious predators. I mean, they are known to hunt mouse deers and all small deers and all. Even small barking deer and all, they'll hunt. And difficult to see. Probably the best place to see this animal is there's a place called Pambadim Shola in Munnar region. That's actually the best place. That's a place I've seen very close to me, probably 2 feet away. I saw it, but I couldn't take a picture. I was so stunned. Again, another very unique animal in Western Ghat. It's called the Malabar spiny dormouse. And in the back, actually, can you see something like a spike? It's coming out. All those fur, it's like our keratin. It's very sharp. That's why it's called the spiny dormouse. Look at the tail also. It's very bushy tail and it's a very stunning animal. The closest relative of this dormouse lives in China. So we don't have anything related in India. I mean, this is a very, very unique animal to see. Periyar is a very good place to see. Munnar is a very good place. Especially there is a few trees that I actually mentioned below. Eliocarpus tuberculosis, Eliocarpus serratus, Myristica species, that is the nutmeg species of trees. They actually known to feed it. So how do you find this dormouse? If you are walking along the road and all, if you find these kind of trees, you can actually see them. They actually bite these fruits and they leave it on the ground. So those are the signs you can find these dormouses. Again, this is a picture taken by my friend. Do you know that in India we have the smallest mammal by mass. I mean, it's 1.8 gram. Imagine. So my friend who was studying these shrews and all, he was telling me, no, David, when this shrew runs around the forest floor, it's like a cockroach. It's the size of a cockroach, smaller than that, and you won't see it. It goes, it runs around and all. And unique animal to see it, but I haven't seen it. This is my friend's picture. Okay, now let's talk about a few trees and plants. I mean, this is one of the wonders in animal kingdom. The Neelakurinji or the Strobilanthes flowers. Every 12 years, this amazing phenomenon happened in Western Ghat. It happened quite a few parts of Western Ghat, especially high altitude. These Strobilanthes trees, they are known to flower every certain years. So this particular one, the Neelakurinji, is known to bloom every 12 years. There are some other Strobilanthes. They known to flowers in every 2 years, some 6 years, some are every 16 years. So the beauty is just imagine. I mean, we know that today we have to attend a talk here, so you must have put an alarm, or if you have some talks next week, we'll make a note on our diary, or we'll put a reminder. But think about this plant. This plant will bloom now, and the biological clock actually calculate next 12 years, and it will bloom in August and September, and it will calculate that next 12 years, and it will bloom in only that time. It's still I can't get through this. How do they calculate this amazing plants? And I think last 2 years ago, 2018, it bloomed in Munnar region. I think one of other side of Munnar, it might bloom next year also. There's a possibility. And because there are several population of these flowers, it's one of the wonders of nature. Again, one of my favorite plants, these are Ceropegia plants. Ceropegia is actually a small plants. These are the flowers. Mainly after the monsoon time, they'll bloom. They actually don't survive more than a few days. But the amazing part, how do they pollinate? So they're one of the main tricksters. What they do. So imagine, can you see in that flower in the below there is actually like a small pot. They have a lot of interesting, liquid and all there, so which attract a lot of honey bees and all other insects. So what the insect, these are openings on the top. So this, let me try to point out that. Okay. Anyway, I'm not able to. So imagine a honeybee wanted to get that sweet liquid. So this honeybee tried to get inside this flowers, but there are a lot of spines. That's why I enlarge another picture to your right screen. You can see some of the spines are coming out. So it's actually inverted. It's facing inverted. So if the insect goes in, it won't be able to come out. So what they does, this flower actually trap the insects inside, and so the insect actually get panicked. I mean, it's actually trapped inside. It will actually try to break through it. It try to fly around and all. So it get pollens all around its body, and there are some parts where they will be able to break it also. So the insects will go out, or the bee will go out, and it will be hungry. It has to get to some other flowers. Again, it will find another Ceropegia plant, and it will go inside. Again, get trapped. Again, it will get out. So that is the way they do this pollination. The Ceropegia fantastica I photographed from Goa. It's mainly found there. Again, one of the picture I wanted, this is my friend Abhishek took this picture. Do you know that we have bioluminescent mushrooms in Western Ghats? Look at that. This is clicked at night without any light. So we have this kind of mushrooms. And still it's a mystery. I mean, I was watching one of the documentary, they saying these lights actually attract a lot of insects, which there eventually insects will, or ants and all kind of insects will come and they get the pollen and they'll walk out. So it's a kind of attracting insects. It's beautiful. Recently we got that in Wayanad also. One of our naturalists, Omkar, he got pictures also of this beautiful bioluminescent mushroom. Okay. When we talk about Western Ghats, we can't skip the flagship species, or the tiger. This picture I took it from Kabani 2 months ago. I worked with tigers quite a few years, but interestingly, in Western Ghats, especially the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, got the highest density of tigers in India. If you take the entire area, Nagarhole National Park, Bandipur National Park, then Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary, putting all three areas plus some other areas, I think over 500 tigers are there. They're amazing animal. And also, I just want to make a point of one of the one of the wildlife sanctuaries in Kerala. It's called the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. A few years ago, they done a camera trap study. So they got over 36 breeding females. They got over 100 tigers in around 380 square kilometer. So that means each tiger got around 4 to 5 square kilometer territory, which is, I think, the highest density of tigers in the world, which not even a tiger reserve. It actually lives in the wildlife sanctuary. It's amazing how do they survive because of the prey population. They have good water, but there are tigers coming out also into the villages and lifting cattle. But whatever say, we have a healthy population of tigers in India and also in Western Ghats. Again, healthy population of leopards, and it's my favorite animal also. I mean, I don't know how do they. I've seen them walking into some of the behind the rocks or some thickets, and they'll just disappear like that. This animal can survive any kind of areas, and there are leopards living in Mumbai city. Okay, this is a star of the Indian jungle. I mean, these recently people have been photographing a lot of black panthers in Nagarhole National Park. I was fortunate to get see this. Like, I still remember this sighting. I mean, I was with my friends, so we were traveling, and I mean, we were looking for other animals. We got to see tigers, few other leopards, And the last safari, we got to see this black panther. He was lying down on that branch. He was, he was not facing us, and we waited for 10-15 minutes. We are taking pictures of his back. And after a few minutes, he got up, stretched his legs, and turned around and looked at us. Oh my God, the eyes were so powerful. I never seen an eyes that so powerful like that. It was glowing in that forest. It's amazing. So when we talk about all these big cats and all smaller things, I think I'll end my talk with this small cats, which is called the rusty spotted cat, one of my favorite cats. I was fortunate to get to see quite a lot of them in Satpura. And also we have a healthy population here in Western Ghats also. So this is the smallest wild cat in the world. And it's got a rusty spots all around the body, and it's got some black stripes on the forehead. And they're small. Imagine this cat. I mean, what is their main food and all? They actually hunt for small beetles or small rodents and small reptiles. They can't hunt a big hare or some other big animals. So it's amazing how this animal survives, and highly nocturnal, largely arboreal, known to live on the trees and tree hollows. Very difficult to see it. Very few people, the fortunate one, got to see this animal. So rusty spotted cat. So in India, we have 15 different cats. Out of that, 4 big cats: tiger, leopard, lions, and snow leopards. People consider clouded leopard is a big cat. Then that also including 5. Then 10 small cat. And tiger is the biggest cat in the world. And smallest wild cat also found in India and also in Western Ghats. That's a rusty spotted cat. Okay, I just want to show you some not good looking pictures, because these are the few things happening around our place. The picture on the top left is the landslide which happened last year in Munnar, which actually happened in the middle of a evergreen forest, and it took a lot of people's life. And you can see a elephant baby, lying down. It's actually died from a human TB. And the golden toads in Panama, they are almost wiped out from the earth. And the picture what you see below is the flood in 2018. And the things what's happening now around the world, it's not looking nice. We have done enough damage to the nature. I think this is the time to look back and turn back and go back to the nature's way, like this year's reimagine, recreate, and restore. So we are all sitting at home. I hope all of you are safe, and thank you. Hope you are enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and I'll be happy to take it up. I'll quickly go through some of the questions if you have any. Yeah, some of you are saying it's really tempting to see. Yeah, do visit Western Ghats. It's an amazing jungle. I mean, I'm fortunate. So probably after the talk, I'll go out and take some pictures of some frogs or something outside. Some pretty ones are out there. Somebody is asking, is the lion-tailed macaque is habituated in human areas? Okay, interestingly, that's I think somebody talking about a population of lion-tailed macaque in Valparai. What happened? There is quite a few villages. So a particular group of these lion-tailed macaque are they are habituated with the people, so they try to go and raid their homes and all. I think that's a place people also go and take photos. Yeah, they do that. I think only that population of lion-tailed macaque are habituated. I don't know any other wild populations are habituated. Rest of them are. It's very difficult to see. Excuse me. Lion-tailed macaques in the wild otherwise. Somebody is asking what are the rare species found in the Palani Hills in Koda area. I think quite a few things, especially some of the frogs. Uh, Dubois, Raworches's Dubois bush frogs is found there, and a few skinks are found there. Somebody is saying, can you send the link of the presentation? You can go and watch it in CJ Chath Facebook page. It will be there. You can watch the presentation again if you want. Yeah, somebody is saying there's a population of LTMs habituated near Niliyampati. Wildlife sanctuary of same Muthanga. Yeah, it is the same Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. I don't want to point a finger but I think I still mention it. I mean, I travel almost 22 states in India. I've been to a lot of national parks in India. Kerala also got the potential. I mean, I don't know if some of you are watching this. Imagine there's a wildlife sanctuary got the highest density of tigers in the world, which is sitting right here, and they don't have a proper tourism. There's no proper way of operating it. I mean, I would love to go and see a tiger there, not just tiger enjoy, but it's a high time government has to think about it. I mean, probably uh, we can work together and create an amazing park there. They need to do a proper workout, how to arrange tourism, it can be benefit for the local community plus the tourist also. Somebody is asking lifespan of a dragonfly, a time taken from Africa to India. Okay, so how does it happen? These dragonflies, first of all, when they lay eggs, this particular dragonfly, uh, it actually the larvae hatch out pretty fast, and they're known to breed in freshwater pools only. They don't breed in any. They follow the rain actually. So imagine when they come to India, they'll be laying eggs. So within 2-3 weeks, the dragonfly larvae will be out, and they'll be ready to fly. So the big dragonflies are known to live probably a month or two, and the smaller one for damselflies for a few weeks. There's no proper studies; only few studies are available. According to that, I'm saying. Somebody is asking actually, how did the elephant die? Okay, that is, it's interesting. One of my friend actually studies the um, uh, uh, wildlife disease, Dr. Arun Sakaria. So he realized a lot of wild animals are actually dying out of human TB, especially the elephant calves are dying out, and leopards are dying out of canine distemper. Can you believe it's a disease for the dogs? So leopards and lions, even I think some of the lions in Gir also died because of that. So it's actually scary. I think the same situation. We are all sitting in our homes, sitting inside, because of the COVID. Probably this the coronavirus was in some of the animals. Someone must have eaten it. Then this virus found out. We are actually a good host. So and lot of us are here in the world, billions and billions of people here. So yeah, it's taking a chance. Somebody is saying, I'll reach on 11. So something about okay, Rabindram. Okay, I'm just reading out some question from Facebook Live. Renu Priyadarshini is asking, are frogs are poisonous? If so, where it will be? Interestingly, in India or in Western Ghats, we don't have any poisonous frogs. It's mainly in South America. All of our frogs are non-poisonous. There are a few toads which got bufotoxin, which is harmful for the dogs or any other smaller animals and all, but it can't kill a human. And also the poisonous frog, what I learned from the books and all, even South American frogs, they can't produce any poison from themselves. So what they do, they eat all this kind of poisonous insects and other creatures. From that they extract the venom and keep it in their skin. That's what they use it. Some Radha Win is asking, are we planning to bring cheetahs to India? Yeah, that is a recent update in India. Indian government. I mean, I'll tell you a brief history of cheetahs in India. We used to have cheetahs in India. I think the last three cheetahs was shot in Madhya Pradesh. There's a place called Sarguja. The king who shot the last three cheetahs, he knew it was the last three remaining cheetahs, and yeah, they wiped out the entire population. Probably some of the stories say all our kings, Akbar, Humayun, all those guys used to have few thousands of cheetahs in their pens. So yeah, they are planning to bring back to cheetahs to India. I don't know. I don't agree with it because we can't keep our tigers safe and other animals safe. Let them keep them safe. Then we can think about cheetahs and all, because they are planning to bring cheetahs from Africa. There's a lot of money involved in that, and I think they are planning to bring to in Madhya Pradesh. There's a place called Kunu Palpur. If they bring it, it'll be interesting. Tigers and cheetahs and leopards will be living among the jungle. I mean, India used to have tigers, leopards, lions, and cheetahs. They all used to live together. Okay, somebody's asking what are the nightlife we get to see. Okay, what we do a nice evening walks where we get to see nice wine snakes, quite a lot of different flying frogs. In fact, I made a small pond where all the gliding frogs are breeding. So that's what we spend in the evenings. We go there and take pictures and all. So there's a lot of questions are coming up. Yeah, somebody is saying there are some lion-tailed macaques habituated in Agumbe Ghat, but it's not like Valpara. Yeah, it's true. Somebody is asking which lens is adaptive for wildlife photography. It's all about what wildlife are you looking at it. If you want to shoot a big tiger or a lion, buy a big lens. Don't go close to it. Better stay away from it. Go with a proper guide in a safari vehicle. And if you want to shoot wildlife like I love, frogs or dragonflies and butterflies, you can use your mobile phones also. I mean, it's all about what you define about wildlife. I mean, for me, wildlife, if I see an ant outside my room, that's a wildlife for me. Oh, somebody's asking, how about leeches? Any problem for you? Oh, yeah, there are leeches in evergreen forest throughout the world. I mean, especially in tropics. We have leeches, so we have leech socks and all. I have a gumboot also. That's what I wear when you go out. How far were you had taken the Black Panther? I think 3 years ago I took the Black Panther picture. He's still showing up. It's interesting. Only one Black Panther which is habituated to the vehicles. I mean, he's showing up. I think most of the people are in Indian wildlife photographer taken the pictures of Black Panther. That particular one. What is the most dangerous snakes in the Western Ghats? Some question uh, from Facebook. It's whatever snake you get bitten. I think the venomous one. It's easy to say, but stay away from it. I mean, whenever I walk out, I carry a torch. I make sure wherever I step, I don't step on a snake. No snakes in the world, at least in Western Ghats, they don't come after you and bite. I've been doing this for almost 15 to 18 years. I never got bitten from a snake. I always live among the forest. In the forest, I walk around, but yeah, I know what I'm doing. So it's there's no danger. It's actually human term. What's the situation on having another reservation of Asiatic lion? I think it's a very interesting and political question. I don't want to answer it in a, in a social media platform because it's our PM's dear animals. So I personally think Madhya Pradesh or any other state should have a small population where they should keep it, because a single disease can wipe out the entire population of Asiatic lions in Gujarat. So I think the government itself should think, even if they don't want to shift outside the Gujarat, they can take it and keep it in Gujarat, some other areas, but they need to do it. I mean, and imagine you have a small population of probably 400 or 500 Asiatic lions. If a disease like canine distemper can or any other disease can wipe out entire population, so they have to think about it. Okay, somebody is asking Venki, how long does it take for a Malabar gliding frog tadpoles to grow into adult? I don't know the exact how many days and all. I think it's probably a few weeks, 2 3 weeks. They'll be in adult. Yeah, somebody is rightly saying instead of bringing cheetah from Africa, we should first protect our Asiatic lion, an endangered animal. It's less than fine. I absolutely agree with you, Chetan. Yeah, I think we can put in that much money also into our tiger conservation. I'm just looking for somebody saying there's a lot of scorpions in Palanis, the large black ones. Which species could be? So the large black one scorpion could be there's a species called Heterometrus. It could be most probably Heterometrus species. Any measures taken to protect animals from COVID? Oh, okay. That is, I don't know how to answer it. I yesterday read a news that in Vandaloo Zoo or something in somewhere in Chennai, quite a few lions are also died out of COVID, and most of them are positive also. I don't know. It's a scary situation. I mean, people are dying, animals are dying. It's a difficult situation we live in. Okay. Your view on man-animal conflict and required measures. Okay, I think I'll talk this also. It's very interesting. It's almost 8 o'clock. Okay, this is my take on wild animal conflict. We can just think about elephants. Why do elephants come to a human land? So we know that in especially, I'll take the example of Kerala. There's a lot of farmers are there. They're farming right next to the forest, and there are hundreds of elephants are there. There are wild boars. They'll all come and raid their crops. If you think from a farmer's point of view, that is the only crop for them. So they have to make enough money so they can look after their family. They can do their kids' education. Everything they have to run from that. And if you think from animal point of view, so this is told by one of the one of the expert who done studies on elephants. So why do these elephants come to this farmland, into sugarcane field or into some banana plantation? So what he told me that, imagine an elephant who's probably feeding in the jungle for 5 to 10 hours for different. He'll be munching different leaves. If he come out and rate the crops for 10 minutes, the amount of protein and energy what he get, it's more than that. Probably instead of spending 10 hours in the jungle, he would rather take some risk. Some people might be cracking some crackers or put some crack bombs, whatever it is. But he is ready to face that. If he ready to face and he get over that, he actually get a feast. All the banana plantation, the hundreds of bananas are right in front of you. You can break and eat it, or the sugarcane plantation. It's all there. So that is the thing. So how do we stop all those things? I think the only way we can stop all this human-animal conflict, the day we value. Okay, imagine I am a farmer. I have a 500 banana plantation. There's 10 elephants are coming to raid my plantation. If I know that if the elephant come and break all this banana plantation and take out all my crop, if the government is ready to pay compensation equal to whatever amount I'm going to get from that crop, I mean, he won't harm the animal. He won't put any stones at it. He won't throw any stones. He won't put any crackers. He don't try to chase away the elephant. He don't put fire on the elephant. So there has to be a system where the government should be able to compensate whatever and it should be actual. There has to be a body to check, how many bananas are destroyed. That much money, if he able to give back, the government able to give back to the farmer, he'll be happy with it. I mean, he'll be happy to come animals to his farm and let it destroy whatever it is, and he'll have a healthy ecosystem also. Until then, it'll be a big conflict. It'll keep on happening. I've seen it all across in central India. There are tigers die there. I mean, because the tigers do come out and kill the cattle. I mean, cattle for the farmers, it's a dear to them. I mean, they don't want a tiger come and kill the cattle, because that is their only food source. So they don't care. They put poison on their carcass. They don't even tell the forest department sometimes. Excuse me. Eventually, the tiger will die. So that's what it's happening. I think it's happening all across the world. Small level conflict happens, but if you want a proper solution, the government has to step in and to find a proper solution, and compensation is the only way. Somebody is saying, can you share about the purple frogs of Western Ghats? Okay, I think I'll take the last question. It's almost 8 o'clock. There's an interesting frog. It's called the purple frog in Western Ghats, which comes out only probably a few days. And I think it's also called in Kerala, we have an amazing festival. It's called the Onam. So we believe that we had a king. He used to rule in Kerala. So he visited every year. He come back and see his all people. So same way, this frog also come out in pre-monsoon time in mid-May and all, and they'll come out and breed. Hundreds and thousands of them. I've seen the thousands of frogs are crawling around me. They'll come out and breed, lay eggs, and they'll disappear. And they'll go underground. So the tadpoles actually cling onto the waterfalls and all. They'll survive, and yeah. So eventually, the small frogs also go back underground. So that's the story. It's an amazing frog to see. It's amazing. Interestingly, that frog actually got the local names also. The people knew before the scientists described this frog. People had the local names for those frogs. Even males and females, they had different names. I think the rest of the questions probably I'll come back to and answer you in Facebook or somewhere. Or please feel free to write to me. You can reach me at in Facebook or Instagram, wherever you like. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining, and stay safe, and I hope to see you all somewhere. We'll cross again somewhere in the jungle. Thank you.